usually I don't have the privilege of introducing somebody who needs no introduction, but I think that's really the case tonight. This is Dan Shaughnessy. He writes for the Globe. He's been here before. Probably all of you folks know him, so I'm just going to turn the evening over to him.
Thank you, Mary. So is this the microphone, Mary? What is this?
Oh,
Is this it?
That's the microphone for the media, and that's...
Oh, so this is for the media. And this is for the people here.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm pretty loud anyway, but I guess we'll be even louder, so we'll do that. Anyway, nice to see everybody. Thank you for coming out. No game tonight. I know that made it easier for you. I mean, no Sox, no Patriots. You know, NFL's playing a little later, but we'll have you gone by then. And yeah, always great. Joe Morgan just came in, my favorite, and I think Joe said, yeah, man. Joe said, is this your 5th time here? And I said, I think so, Joe, but I don't know. I can't really keep track because it's been a very friendly place for me, a safe haven, and I love coming back here and feel like honorary member of your town. I really do like it here. And I know more about it than most places, and we'll get into that a little bit. And I just want to have just a little moment of silence, respect for Brendan Sheehan, who so many years connected with me to get me out here. And he was a really nice young man. I'm sorry we lost him. And so just thinking of him tonight, I've got good thoughts for Brendan. And Mary taking care of me tonight. And all of you guys coming out, beautiful weather. Nice of you to come inside for this. And yeah, so it's going to be the usual, I'll give you a couple stories, and then we'll take it where you want to go. You know, I'll do my best. And we can just take this where you want to go. I mean, if anybody's been at the other 4, it's the same old saw every time, so you know the drill by now. It's like, I don't know if I have any new material, but it's my own thing. I don't know who knows about it, but I had a quadruple bypass in February, so that was an event. And it's actually, I haven't done much speaking since all that went down, and it was totally unplanned. I mean, it wasn't like I had a heart attack or anything. I had some numbness in my elbows when I was jogging, and I turned 70, and I'm like, I know that's not good. My dad had a lot of heart stuff, and we lost him early, so I routinely see my regular physician and reported the new symptom, which I knew wasn't good. He ordered the stress echo, which I've had a million of those. Keep track of this stuff when you get older, and they didn't like the blood flow, and they sent me for an angiogram at the Brigham and Women's, So I get in there, and I figure I'm going to be in there a couple hours. I threw my keys at the valet guy. He says, when are you going to be out? I said, I'll be out in about 3 hours. And 11 days later, I was wheeled out of there. It was like, so they do the angiogram, and some of you, there's a little precursor to this story that you need to know, which not everybody's familiar with, but John Henry, the owner of the Red Sox, is also the owner of the Boston Globe, which is my employer. So the first 10 years of his owning the Sox, he didn't own the Globe. And we got along great in those days. I was like, I don't know, we took a boat ride together in Seattle and went to his house for dinner, just the two of us. It's like we were dating. It was good. And then somewhere along 2009 or something like that, started to go the other way. It wasn't real good. And then when I wrote the book with Terry Francona, it got really bad then, because that never would have been allowed had he owned the Globe then, but he still didn't own the Globe, so I was allowed to do the book. Book came out, and the ownership didn't look great in the book, because them talking after they fired him, talking about his Percocet abuse and failed marriage, and it's like he was done dirty on the way out the door. Not the first time that's happened with somebody getting fired from a position. And so Tito, when Tito got fired, I sent him an email, because my agent's really aggressive. He goes, oh, you should do a book. I did a book with Joe Torre and Tom Verducci. And when they fired Torre, we did a book called The Yankee Years, and sold 1 million books. You should do that. I said, yeah, but Tito doesn't even like me. And he says, well, send him an email anyway. So I sent him an email. I said, Tito, sorry you got fired. Want to do a book? And he says, no, and not with you. So I let that bounce off me, and we wore him down. My agent's a substantive guy. And then when the Sox kind of poured the dirt on him after he was fired, he got a little agitated about that. I think he wanted to get his side of events out. And I became a good voice for that because, you know, I try to play it down the middle, but I don't worry about who's going to be bothered if it's the truth. So we did the book together, and when it was announced, I knew it wasn't a real party starter at Yawkey Way, the fact that I was doing a book with Tito. And he came to pick me up at our house. My wife's a clinical psychologist, the only one in Newton, strangely enough. And so she knows nothing about sports, which is perfect for a 42-year marriage. So Tito picked me up, and he had this black Cadillac Escalade. And I brought my bride out and said, "Mary Lou, this is the former manager of the Red Sox, Terry Francona." And Tito said, "Nice to meet you. And our first stop is going to be to get my windows tinted so no one sees me driving your husband around." So he meant it. And so anyway, the book came out, and it was, you know, the owner wasn't happy with that. So I was in disfavor. And it's been 10 years, and I give John Henry credit because I'm sticking him in the elbow all the time about things I don't approve of. My little opinion about the ownership of the Red Sox hasn't been as great in the last 5 or 6 years. They sort of pivoted. And so that hasn't been party. But he allows me to work there and write my column, and I give him credit for that. That can't be easy. You know, picking up your paper that you own and seeing who's this guy kicking the crap out of me all the time. So that was good. So anyway, there's a little history there that goes back to my heart event. So I had the angiogram at the Brigham, and you know, I think they stuck a needle. They gave me drugs to do it because it's kind of invasive, and then they're really checking the blood flow. So when I came out of it, they said, "Oh, you're not going anywhere. We're doing bypass on you in the morning. You go upstairs, and we'll see you in the morning. We cleared our schedule. You could just go at any moment, standing up too fast." I'm like, "Okay." So I went upstairs, and I had that Sunday column I do. It's fairly long. It's a lot of notes, opinions, and little shots here and there. And it was in good shape. It was a Tuesday. I said, "You know, that thing's in good shape. I usually file it Thursday. And it goes online Friday, it goes in Sunday print." I said, I could just put a top on that and send it along, and you know, have my surgery, and the column will run over the weekend. So I already did most of it. So I said, "I just need a top. I'll reach out to Theo." Theo just came back to Fenway Sports Group. He's a legendary around here, so that'd be a good top, and he'll help me out. So I sent Theo a text. I said, "Theo, have a quick conversation about you coming back to the Sox." And he texts back, "I'm in the hospital now, you know. My son's just brought me a meatball sub," which evidently wasn't on the you know, I think it was my last meal, you know, in every way. So Theo texts back, he goes, "Yeah, I'm not doing a lot of media on this. I don't want to have a lot of attention. And plus, I just, if I do talk to you off the record, we got to do it in a couple days." So I texted him back. I said, "That won't do. I'm actually having bypass surgery in the morning at the Brigham." Well, that gets your attention if you're a nice person, which he is. So now he calls me. I'm in the hospital, and I'm still messed up from that angiogram, those drugs. You know, I mean, when I came out of that thing, they said they could have said anything. I would have agreed to it. You know, it's like, so whatever. But so I'm a little woozy. And Theo says, "Hey, Dan, sorry about your surgery. What do you need? I'm off the record, but I can tell you what the background on this is, and you can figure it out." So I'm like, okay. So we have a nice conversation, and he keeps going, "Dan, are you messed up on drugs? Because you don't seem..." "No, don't worry, I got this, you know." And so then, you know, we're really getting along good in this conversation because I'm a little, you know, it's probably like I'm drunk or something, right? So, and then he says, "I'll send you this thing I wrote to explain me coming back. But, you know, you can't show it to anyone. You can't use it. It's just for your background." So he sends me this really privileged document, you know, as an email. And, you know, I see it, and I cobble together the column. I file it to the Globe. I tell them, you know, "Thanks very much. Having surgery tomorrow. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. But this can run this weekend." And, you know, I wake up the next day before the surgery, and now I'm no longer under the influence of my angiogram drugs, but I'm going for the bypass. They're wheeling me around. I'm like, I wonder what I wrote in that thing. I don't really remember. I think Theo sent me something. So I go to my phone. I saved this for you guys now. I'm old. I'm not good at this, but I think I can find it. Hold on a second. My face up there. There we go. Okay. So And I found the email he sent me. This is the morning of my bypass. And there's an email from Theo from last night when I was on drugs. And it says, Dan, let's hope this isn't the last thing you ever read. I am not making this up. And then he puts parentheses, if someone at the Globe is reading this after Dan's unfortunate demise, please delete it. Your boss, John, would not be happy. So I'm like, this guy's got the gallows humor going, really good sense of humor. That's pretty cool. And then, I had the bypass. They had to go back in. It was messy. It was 2 days of surgeries and major drugs, like getting hit by a truck. Some of you guys probably all have worse stories than me. I was very fortunate. I had great care. But it's a lot. And the recovery was a lot. In those first few days, so I came out of it. It was like 48 hours after 2 surgeries. I came to on Thursday. And then I'm woozy all weekend. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I filed that column on Tuesday night. I wonder what's in there. So, and then I see this document he sent me, which is really privileged. I'm like, oh boy, hope that's not in there. So I said to my wife, would you mind bringing the Globe in on Sunday? Because I need to see what's in there. Well, fortunately, I behaved, in my state, my drug state, it was okay, and everybody was the better for it. And I made deadline, and I was still out of it, and Boston Globe was out. It looked like nothing had happened, so we had that. So that's what leads me tonight. My recovery is, again, very, very lucky. We're all lucky we live around here. We have great medical care, and it's one of the great things about living around here. And another great thing about living around here is just our local sports community, which is why I've been able to have this amazing career writing about these teams for you guys. And it's really you guys that make it the greatest job in New England, in my view. And really, as a sports writer, the best job in America, because no region has fans like, if we do say so ourselves, we are the best fans. I mean, we are. It's like we have smart people, we have well-read people, we have devout people, we have young people in the schools who kind of energize everything every year. And we have the 4 seasons, which we're having our best one now. And we have 4 franchises that have a lot of history, a lot of championships in this century, the High Renaissance, 13 championships since the millennium, which is pretty darn good. And I just, every day, it's like our business isn't what it was, not as many people read the Globe, the print product's going away, blah, 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 all those things. I don't bay at the moon or complain about what used to be. And I liked watching the NBA more then than I do now, a lot of things. But I console myself with there's no better place to do what I do, and I got to do it at the time when it was really something. I mean, the Globe used to have 1 million papers, and people, they really hung their hat on what we wrote, what our opinions were. And just to have that platform was incredible, and I really feel blessed. So that's something I never take for granted. And same with, I keep those front pages. I get to write the front page account for all 13 championships in this century. They're all in it used to be the old Globe on Morrissey Boulevard, and now they're in my house in Newton. And I had the empty frame waiting after the Patriots won in 2000, it was February 19. We had that drought. We had the pandemic, then we had the championship drought, and my God, we went 5 whole years without a championship. And we had some close calls. Sox got to, within a couple games of the World Series in 2021. Bruins, of course, were in St. Louis in 2019, Game 7 at home. Couldn't believe that one didn't come home. And Celtics in the finals 2 years ago. So, some near misses. I had this empty frame waiting for championship number 13. And then after my heart event, my goal was to be recovered in time to do the finals. And by June, I was able to fly to Dallas. We thought they might win in 4, that game 4 in Dallas. They ended up losing by 100 points. So actually ended up being better because that way they got to come home and win it on Monday at the Garden. It was more fun to win that thing at the Garden because these things, I keep track. They've been won New Orleans, Houston, St. Louis, Jacksonville, Denver, Boston, Vancouver, Boston again, Glendale, Arizona, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Houston, and then Boston in June. So that's the 13. That's who we were for all of them. Got to be there for all of them. And again, just really, really privileged. And back to my little Walpole thing. Okay, you guys can help me out here. So I don't know. I mean, Joe was managing starting in '88 into the early '90s. And Milbury, I know, is from Walpole, and he was coach of the Bruins. And Jimmy Rogers raised his sons played at Walpole High School, and I think he was still here when he was coaching the Celtics. Did Pete Carroll live in Walpole? Midfield. Missed it. So no Patriot head coach lived here? Ron Meyer. Okay, and then he would predate. Well, what's the most you had at the same time? Like, between Joe, like, I know Joe's window, but I don't know Milbury and Jimmy Rogers. Were they all at once? That would have been, why didn't I write that? That would have been a good thing. So, and again, but I have, our kids were all at Newton North High School and Bay State League. So you guys, I saw a Little League team over here when I was in my car, doing my hair to get ready for the big event here. And I'm looking at these little squirts and I'm like, those guys are going to be torturing Newton North in about 12 years. I said, because I know, was Tompkins the coach? Joe, high school? Walpole? Was he still there in 2006?
No.
Who was the guy then? You and your friend the scout used to set up the chairs right behind the backstop and watch those guys strike out Sam Shaughnessy on a regular basis. I'm sitting next to Joe, and my son leads off for Newton North against this great left-hander that Walpole had. I think he went to Virginia Tech or something, I'm not sure. But the kid, Sam takes strike one, didn't think it was a strike. He's grumbling about the umpire. He's already struck out. Baseball is so, manages to foul off strike two and then lunges at something low and away for strike three. And Joe Morgan says, there's such a thing as striking yourself out. And that's what he did. Joe used to always say great stuff like that. He'd say, all these pitchers today, the sore arms and the lats and the wrists and the forearms and the shoulders. And, that didn't exist. Warren Spahn used to tell us, ice is for putting it in my drink after the game. That's what ice is for. I don't need all this. And Joe would point out, he said, did you ever notice how catchers never have a sore arm? Well, they're throwing all the time. Maybe that's what these guys should be doing. So, again, the philosophy of the manager, that's why Joe should be up here talking, and I should be in the back row getting some more wisdom like I used to do when Joe was managing the team. Anyone needs a quick, if you haven't boned up on the Joe history, when he was coach under John McNamara in 1988, Mac, rest his soul, had been manager in 86. He and I wasn't good, and I was a wise ass, and he didn't like me, and I understand that. Who would like that? So, but he was just sour, and I remember we all picked the Sox to finish first in '88 because they were pretty talented, but they had underachieved in '87 after going to the World Series in '86. Mac's the manager, and Mac saw these predictions. He goes, I think you guys are picking us first just to see me fail. I'm like, come on, Mac. That's no attitude to have. Well, sure enough, they did. So it's another Dan medical story. So I had a nasal polyps or something. I'm actually a pretty healthy guy, so this sounds like I'm always, But in 1988, in July, I had nasal polyp surgery. Richie Gedman had the same thing. He told me what it was going to be like. I didn't do any columns with Theo that day. He was probably in junior high school, but not even. So anyway, and I was in the anesthesia, and I came out from this small day surgery, and on July 14th, they said, hey, while you were getting operated on, John McNamara was fired by the Red Sox. And I'm like ripping tubes out. I said, I got to write this story. I said, I am not going to let Larry Whiteside or anybody else write this one. So Joe takes over, and what do? They win 12 straight, 19 out of 20. And it was epic, the greatest launch of a managerial career in history. They win the division twice, get to the playoffs in '88, playoffs in '90. And when the Red Sox made the boneheaded decision to replace Joe in the '90s with nice guy Butch Hobson, because for some reason they had to rush Butch into the chair, Joe departed and said, this team's not as good as everybody thinks they are, And he was right. I mean, poor Butch, they finished last 2 or 3 times the next 3 years. He had to get fired and all that stuff. So anyway, that's my Walpole. But the high school coaches, I was there when Coach Lee went to Coach Grant. I was there for that game. I think they played Framingham the day the first game that Coach Grant came in. And then later on, I saw the basketball team. on the same day at the Garden, the girls and boys both won the state championship. And that was the Coach Wolf team. Coach Wolf later coached at BU, where his son was on the team. And the kid, Big Tim Clifford, who went to Holy Cross, 6'10" kid. Another kid named Thornton, who was a pitcher at Northeastern, I believe. But they had 5 Division I athletes on the basketball team. And that's really not your sport, basketball, but it was that year. And they won both on the same day. And sure enough, I checked the program, and I found a brother-sister. There was one on each team. They weren't the stars necessarily, but the same family had a girl and a boy, both winning the state championship at the Garden on the same day. I remember that. But most of my memories outside, and the baseball team kicking North's ass, and then the basketball team, the 2 in the Garden, and the football team, the legendary, the Rebels, the old days. But it was the Porkers that really made the biggest impression, and that's just because my daughter was captain of the Newton North field hockey team, and man, oh man, we'd come up here and it was like a different sport. It was like an Olympic team. I couldn't believe how good they were. And anytime I meet a young woman from Walpole, I ask if she was a Porker because they have so much pride in it. And I'm into the Watertown scene now too. They got a great team, and I think they're a division below, but I wish they played each other every day because their powerhouse is similar to that. One little Newton North field hockey story. It's always easy to dump on my adopted hometown of Newton. I grew up in Central Mass, small town in Groton, but I've lived in Newton for a lot. We raised our family there. So this is a great Newton story. So there's a field hockey game. This would have been turn of the century, 2002. And I think it was, I don't know, Braintree or Framingham, I don't know. But, the official came over to our sideline early in the game and said, yeah, there's a parent over there who's got a cigar going, and I need the team captain to go have him put that cigar out. And so my daughter's got to run over to this man who's a dad of one of the players of the other team. He says, excuse me, sir, but you need to put the cigar out. He says, no way, just because I'm in Newton, I'm not going to go along with your woke rules here. We're not going to do that. Well, it's a state law. I mean, so it's not really a Newton thing, but that's how he was taking it. He wasn't having it. So my daughter runs back, tells the coach, yeah, he's not doing it. So then the coaches get into it, the officials get into it, and he wouldn't put the cigar out. So eventually he was kind of nudged off the premises, and they penalized the team. They got a corner for this. I don't know what a corner is, but it's an opportunity to score. And Newton's got a goal, and it ended up being a tie game because of the cigar. It was sort of like the anti-victory cigar of Red Auerbach, But, I mean, imagine it being on the bus and your dad wouldn't put out the cigar, and we didn't win because of that. So that was a field hockey story from then. But I love high schools, always have, and you have a really great one here, and great teams with great tradition and honor. So those are my little stories coming in, and now we're going to turn this portion of the program over to you and try to take some questions and have a little back and forth with one another. Yes, sir.
I have a question for you. What was your surgery at Brigham? I've had a second aortic valve replaced there on the 25th of July.
Well, God bless you. You look great.
Yes. I used to spend my winters in Florida.
Oh, boy.
You remember when they opened up Federal Lawn?
Oh, well, sure.
You know what John Henry gave everybody who came to the exhibition game? If you know, I'm going to take you out for dinner.
Well, what's the question?
Anybody who was at the exhibition games, he gave everybody a hot dog and a drink.
Really?
Today, he would give you a glass of water.
That's part of the pivot that concerns me.
Who was your doctor?
Dr. George Tolis was my surgeon at the Brigham, and that was in February.
My doctor's name was Dr. Y.P. Sugg.
Well, there you go. I think we should talk. Let's compare notes. I'll go get my file and we'll compare notes after the surgery. They were great. They were great.
My wife called the doctor at 12 at night.
Okay.
Called me back 10 minutes later.
All right. Well, you and I are doing good. We're lucky we had those guys.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm able to walk.
Yeah, you're doing good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
You talked tonight about John McNamara, always had pets. But I don't know about John McNamara.
Good.
There was an equally game this year where Reggie Jackson talked about John McNamara
Yes.
and what he did.
I wrote about that. Reggie's talked about that.
You feel any different about John McNamara?
Well, I mean, I knew that about John. and John, I mean, again, just because he's nasty to me and most of the writers doesn't make him a bad guy. I understand that. And, it's just, we weren't treated very well. And, some people love John McNamara. And Reggie told the story.
Stood up for those guys.
Reggie told the story when they were minor leagues and playing in Birmingham. And, the black players did not feel welcome, that John really stood up for those guys. And I can see that. He certainly had that in him. I mean, again, a bad day, a bad attitude doesn't change, the larger things he did. And I made sure to write about that when Reggie said it, because I'm like, got to be fair to this guy. That's pretty good. So Reggie's always done that, and that's a true story, and Reggie, very heartfelt. So yeah, so John stuck up for the guys who weren't getting backed at the time. That goes back to the '60s, and there's no doubt in my mind that that's a true story, no doubt. Yes, sir.
You've been very open about your opinion of Deion Sanders.
Ugh.
You've written about other guys. Are there a couple of things that help drive that decision? You're very firm, I think, in your opinion of him.
Yeah, this is about Deion Sanders, and I have a very low opinion of him. I think he's a complete fraud. I root against him. I hate watch his games every week, hoping they get their butts kicked. Nothing against the worthy players of Colorado. I just think he's used Colorado to promote the candidacy of his sons in the NFL, and that he's got I mean, again, in college sports today, everybody's as dirty as everybody else, so there's no new standards of these guys are this and that, because everybody's on the take, and it's all dollars and like that. But there's a specific, we're on video tonight, which will live forever. So we're not going to have. I can talk to you after the thing, and when I do, you'll agree with me. So yeah. But I'm not alone there. I mean, there's a body of evidence. He was one of the greatest athletes of all time, but I have a very low opinion of him, and he deserves it. So unredeemable. That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah, I know you're in contact with Bob Cousy.
Yes.
How's he doing recently?
Well, Kuz is 96, and he's not moving around as good as Joe Morgan, but he's as sharp as Joe Morgan, which is no small thing. And he's just a wonderful man who, went to Holy Cross in 1951. He was the first superstar in the NBA, and a lot of people don't know that anymore. People think it started with Michael Jordan or started with LeBron James, or even Bill Russell. Well, no, it started with Bob Cousy, who was 6 years ahead of Russell coming to the league, and was MVP of the league in 1957. And just very sharp guy, and I can't say enough. And I think he's in a wheelchair most of the time, and he's got that neuropathy, hands and feet, nerve stuff, and he's uncomfortable, but he's got two daughters who rotate, taking turns looking after him. And I'm hoping he can be well enough to come out when they get the rings in October. I just don't know what about traveling or being out at night, that kind of thing. And he's got to come in from Worcester, so they'll make sure he gets honored and noted. But I just don't know if he'll be there, because he really hasn't been. He got out to Polar Park for the honorary first pitch a few times, but not this year. He just did it by video. But I will tell him you're asking for him here in Walpole. So yeah, thank you. He's a wonderful guy.
All-time favorite.
Yeah, well, that's a good choice. I appreciate that. Thank you. Who else has a question? Don't scratch your head, or I'll call on you. Yes.
I was wondering how you got interested in sports writing.
It was nice. Appreciate that. It's how I got interested in sports writing. And when I was walking out today, it was a young woman with her 11 and 7-year-old sons. I think the boy's name was Isaac. Isaac said he wants to be a sports writer, so I told him, go back indoors and get some sports books and read them. That's what I was doing. And in those days, there weren't a lot of sports books. So the librarian would set them aside, and I would come in and read them. But I'm the youngest of 5 kids. A couple of them were really good athletes. I was always going to the games. I played all the sports through high school. I had older siblings. My sister was better than I was. She was a stud, so that hurts. It's bad when your sister's better than you are, because it really mattered to me, and it did matter to her. She was just great. And I had a brother my brother played in the Cape League. He was a very accomplished, local high school and college player. So I was always coming home and reporting the games to my parents. I was sort of doing it then. And I just really when I was like 8 years old, I knew so much more when I was 8 than I know now. I mean, I could tell you every player for the Houston Astros, and Colt 45s is what they were then. I knew every player on every team. I don't know. It's too hard now. Too many teams, too much change, and who can do it? I don't know how these announcers, like Sean McDonough, how does he do that? He goes to these hockey games, and he knows all the players, and the puck's moving around. I couldn't do that in a million years. But when I was 8, I could do that. So complete immersion in reading and writing about it, playing it, and through high school. And then when I got to Holy Cross, I was certainly not going to keep playing. I wasn't good enough to play at that level. And I put my time into the school paper and ingratiated myself to the Boston Globe guys. And at that time, you know, God bless my dad for subscribing to the Globe from Groton, Massachusetts. It probably cost $0.05 a day, and it was probably racking up the subscription bills, but it was well worth it because we had this staff of, you know, Ray Fitzgerald, Lee Montville, Bud Collins, Peter Gammons, Bob Ryan, Jack Craig, you know, Will McDonough, just on the line. We had the best guy in every sport. They're all in the Hall of Fame. And then when I was in college, I was fortunate enough to be able to work there in the summers. And I stayed there covering high schools after graduation. And then for 5 years, I went to Baltimore and Washington to cover the Orioles. And then my paper went out of business, which happens a lot, especially then. And I came back to the Globe in 1981, so that's 43 years ago. But that's, yeah, that's the genesis of how it is. So if you know young people, just tell them to keep reading and keep writing and keep playing. Yes, sir?
Yeah, where do you stand on the Michael Jordan versus LeBron?
Michael Jordan versus LeBron. Well, Chamberlain was better than both of them. So, you know, I mean, I stand with that. And I'm not as hot on Jordan as everybody is. And I was there. I covered the Celtics every day for 4 seasons, from 82 to 86. So Jordan got drafted in 83 or 4, I guess. No, 83. And whatever it was, that draft, if you remember, he was picked 3rd, you know, because Sam Bowie was 7 feet tall, and Portland.
James Worthy.
No. No, it was Bowie. Olajuwon. So that was legit. So Houston had 1, and they took Hakeem, and they never got any grief for that. So they bypassed Jordan as well, but they got Hakeem, you know, one of the top 20 players of all time. It was the 2 pick with Portland who had the choice. And they took Sam Bowie, who was 7 feet tall, and they had a duplication of services with Clyde Drexler and Jerome Kersey and, you know, 6'5" slashers. And they just, no one knew how good Jordan was going to be. Anyone who says, I mean, we always say Dean Smith's the only guy who can stop him, you know, because they didn't have an open offense, and Jordan didn't get a lot of touches, shots, as they call it then. But he came in, and I was with the Celtics every day, so I knew him really well. And I talked to Larry after that first game of the Garden. Jordan had like 25. Celtics beat them. And a lot of guys got 25 against the Celtics. And Larry said, that guy's the greatest player I've ever played against. He's going to be the greatest player ever. And I said, and Larry never blew smoke like that. He never did. So I'm like, he sees something that I don't see, but he's Larry Bird, so I'm going to go along with that. And of course, he ended up being right. But LeBron is doing it, 39 or 40, no one could do that, which is outstanding. But again, Larry would talk to me about Chamberlain, and I felt the same way. He says, guy averaged 50 points a game, scored 101 game. They changed rules for him, and 50 points a game. That means if you score only 30, you got to get 70 the next night to keep your average. And never fouled out, because the rebounds are skewed because there were just so many more rebounds then, so you really can't use those numbers. They didn't keep block shots. And of course, Russell had the Hall of Famers and beat him. And Wilt only won 2 rings, so it's a hard case to make, and everybody's forgotten about him. But physically, he holds up. He was 7'1", same body as LeBron except 7'1", and so I just say that. But I think I would hope they'd be top 3 in anybody's list, but unfortunately, Wilt doesn't get held up the way. If you're older, you remember. So I do. But yeah, those are fun arguments. Yes, Joe.
Hey, Dan, do you remember this story? One time you wrote a bad article on me. Because I didn't read it, but Dottie read it.
Here we go.
So we're in the hotel in New York in the lobby.
Sheridan, 56th and 7th. Oh, the Grand Hyatt. Probably the Grand Hyatt.
Okay, but here's the story. You see that guy over there, Dottie? That's Dan Shaughnessy. He's the guy that wrote that article. She pranced right over to you and said, You know that wasn't true. Why did you do that? And you said, well, my boss told me to do it, and if I don't do it, I'll get somebody else to do it. So you did it, and then you said to Dottie, I'll take care of Dottie, don't you worry. I'll take care of Joe too. And you did from that day on.
Easy to do, thank you.
Well, I've told this one before, but I'm going to use it again since Joe has come up with this story, which makes it look like I was ever hard on him, which I never was difficult. I never wrote anything critical of Joe. But in Baltimore, there was if you do those pregame radio shows like Joe, the great Joe Costeg, who's retiring now, but they always have gift certificates if you do the pregame show. We were in Baltimore, and Joe had done the pregame show, and so there's a gift certificate for $50 at Joseph Banks Clothing in Baltimore. And I did the show the next day, and they said, hey, here's Joe's certificate. We interviewed the manager last night. We forgot to give him this. This is his, $50 free clothes at Joseph Banks. Well, I had worked in Baltimore 5 years. I had a rent-a-car. I knew where the store was. No one ever uses those things. That's how they give them away, because you come in and out of town, you're not going to find Joseph Banks. I knew, and I had the car, and I had worked there. So I'm like, okay, I'll take these too. And I get to Joseph Banks the next day, last day of the series, and I'm like, I forgot to ask Joe what he wants. So I call the Cross Keys Inn in Baltimore. I said, Joe, Shaughnessy here. I got your gift certificate from that radio show for $50 of free clothes at Joseph Banks. What do you want? I'm going to get you a sweater or something? He says, I could really use some underwear. Absolutely true story. So of course, the next question is boxers or briefs, right, like that. So it was boxers. I won't give any more information than that. And so I load up with the right size, grabbing the packs of 3, $50. In 1989, it was a lot of underwear for $50. So I come back to the Cross Keys Inn with my bag. I go up and knock on the door. It was like I gave him a bag of gold. He was so happy. So that's a fact, not made up. True story. Who has the next question? Yes, sir.
I was going to ask you a boring question about the state of professional sports, but you mentioned 82 to 86, and I remember reading your articles, and I'm curious if the standards of today's media applied to what was going on in 82 to 86, would our view of those glorious teams be different?
So basically, this is about how things have changed since I covered the Celtics 82 to 6. I actually wrote a book about it. It's called Wish It Lasted Forever. I hope they've got it in the Walpole Library. Just got a royalty statement today. We sold 40,000 of those suckers. It was a pandemic book because no one was going anywhere and we had all that free time. So my agent said, do a book. You're telling all those bar stories for 40 years about the Celtics. Make it a book. So I did. And no one's ever going to write a book like that again. And to your point, we had this access, and had this when I covered the Sox with Joe. We were on the bus. We were in the hotel. We were in the hotel bar. You just organically saw people, like if you're in the military or in college or whatever, you're just with the same people all day. And we were there, and they didn't close practices, or we had tremendous access. And I'm sure they didn't love that, but so everybody, and we weren't going to write about stuff that the fans didn't need to know. If one of the starting pitchers was drunk at the bar, as long as he wasn't pitching the next morning, we were okay with that. You didn't need to make a thing out of that. So anyway, but if a guy got arrested, then it's going in. We're writing that because that's affecting the fans and the team, and he's not here, and here's why. So anyway, there was a lot of trust and a lot of access. So to your point, that stuff's never coming again. There's no access like that. And now with social media, these guys are way better behaved now because anybody goes out to anywhere, someone's got their phone here, and they're in your face, and all your stupid stuff is, I'm glad I didn't grow up with this. I mean, who could pass the muster of every moment of your life in public being recorded and sent around the world? No, thank you. So, yeah, it's just changed. So, and the good part is the young athletes are far more careful, and I think have better habits by and large. And so they don't fall into the traps, and they're better educated about it. Watch out for this, watch out for that. Take care of your money, and take care of your family. And I think guys take care of your body. careers last longer, they take care of themselves. I see far less nonsense than I was part of when we were young. So good for them. But yeah. Yes. Yeah, there he is. Thank you for holding that. Stand up with that book, please. Yes. Hey, there it is. Yeah. Wish it lasted forever. Life with the Larry Bird Celtics.
40,001.
Yeah, see, it's available on Amazon. Go on Amazon tonight. You can have that mailed to your house tomorrow. They'll come. The technology. I have one technology story. Who has Siri, or where this thing talks to you in the car? All right, okay, it's all new to me. So I'm bad with all the stuff, and I have adult children, so they show me how to do it. I can't do my expenses. I can't do anything, So my adult children take care of that, but I'm getting a little better, and I now I use the Waze to find School Street tonight. I used to just feel my way around here, but now I just put the Waze in, and there it is. So it talks to you. So this man asked a question about Bob Cousy. And it was before my surgery. It was over the winter, and Bobby Knight had died. And Bobby Knight was a great American figure, great coach, and a very vulgar guy, and temper, and all the stuff that went with that. And Cousy, I knew Cousy didn't like him because Knight had coached at Army at the West Point when Coos was coaching BC. Coos was a retired Hall of Famer, coach in BC. In the 60s, doing well, and Knight was a young guy at Army. And Coos said, I called Coos and said, give me some Bobby Knight stuff, he just died. He says, he said, we didn't have the best encounters. I coached against him 3 times, and I have yet to shake the man's hand. And he told the stories, and one of them was, he says, one year, he called me, he said, we need a scrimmage. Would you mind coming up here to West Point? We'll have a scrimmage day. This is preseason. I'm like, that's a long way to go to help these guys out, but it's the U.S. West Point. We honor that. We'll do it. So the BC team drives. It's so long. You go to Hudson River, down 5 hours, whatever. So up by the Bear Mountain Inn. And they go up. They get off the bus. He says, we go into this scrimmage, and his guys are guerrillas. He's got them beating up our guys. Fist fights every time, and there's no control. He hasn't got his guys corralled. I'm like, Coach, can you have him tone it down? We're up here trying to have a scrimmage to get better for the season. He says, the whole day was bad. He says, and when the day ended, I walked off the court, and we didn't shake hands that day either. And I said, Coach, take a good look at my ass walking out of the gym, because you're never going to see it again. And so I put that in the story, and the Globe, they have all these policies about ass in this case. He's like, yeah, we're changing that to behind, behind, I'm like, no, we got a 95-year-old guy saying, take a good look at my ass. That's way better, take a good look at my behind. So I'm like, so I'm fighting with my editor, and I'm in the car picking up somebody at the airport, one of my adult children. And so he says, I'll kick it around with the other editors, and we'll make a ruling on it, because they were going to put it in the paper the next day, and I had to decide whether it was going to be ass or behind. And so I plug in the phone thing, and I see, as I pick up my daughter, as I'm driving back through the tunnel, the light comes on that there's a message from my boss, Matt Pepin. And it's like, you have a message from Matt Pepin. So I'm like, my daughter's like, well, just hit that. It'll just read it aloud. So I'm like, really? So we hit the button, and it goes, from Matt Pepin, I will give you ass on this one. I'm like, try to explain that. It's like, so anyway, I digress. So anyway, back to you. Give me a question here. Yes, right here.
I don't know if I'm the only one, but I find it deeply offensive to see David Ortiz promoting sports gambling between innings. Is there a blowback on that?
So the gentleman is asking about David Ortiz doing the sports gambling ads, and he doesn't think it's a good thing. I second that emotion. I have a very complicated history with David Ortiz. He's such a great player and so clutch and all this. And he's not alone. I mean, there's a million guys doing it. And David's basically doing, I don't know why he feels the need to do everything. It's like, I think he's way overexposed, and it's not my business, so good for him, go make more money, but there's certain things I just would draw the line, and I won't go near it. I won't, if I'm on the radio, I don't read any spots. I just think it's a scourge, the gambling, and of course it's ubiquitous on TV and radio, and you watch the games and everything's, you know, Rob Refsnyder, 1.5 hits tonight, you know, give me a break. There'll be a bad ending to this. Well, it won't be the end, but there'll be really bad things. You know, games are going to get fixed and thrown, and guys are going to go to jail, whatever. And again, the young people in college, how'd you like to be these 21-year-old young guys drunk and think they know everything about football, and they siphon their bank accounts to the betting sites, and it's like a big hose just taking the money out. So I think it's terrible, but the ship has sailed, and now we have the point where the leagues are in business, the gamblers. The people who for decades they told us, don't go near this, you're out of baseball for life, Pete Rose, Joe Jackson, etc. And now they're partners with them. So it's a disgrace, and you know, but there's other guys. I mean, David's certainly not alone in this one. A lot of guys. Yes, sir.
The Red Sox and the Yankees wore a patch on your shoulder.
Yes.
21. Do you know what?
Yeah, that was Roberto Clemente Day yesterday. Roberto Clemente. 21 is Clemente's number. So, you know, he was yesterday it was all around baseball. It was Roberto Clemente Day. So the teams, every game in the big leagues yesterday, they wore that.
Okay.
Who else has one? Back there. Yes, sir.
Do you have a favorite Kaya Skremski story?
Favorite Yaz story. I love Yaz. We almost did a book together in 2010. He's very private, and like he wouldn't do this in a million years, like what we're doing tonight. It's just, and he doesn't mean any harm by it. He's just extremely reserved, and most of us remember more about his career than he does. He just doesn't dwell on it, and I've accepted all of it. It's funny, his grandson's having a nice career, making nice money, and really happy for Mike. And the Giants played here in May, and we were like, Mike, did you see your grandfather? And the last day of the series was a day game. He said, yeah, he came into the clubhouse this morning on getaway day. He was in here about 10 minutes. He says, I think he left the car running. Okay, so everybody's in on the joke here, because when he's thrown out a first pitch at every World Series that they've won, all 4 in this century, and he says, I'm undefeated, the whole thing's great. But I always write, when he throws out the first pitch, I know those guys that do the parking cars on Van Ness Street down there where the players' lot is, and I'll just check in like, Yaz leave yet? Because I'm like, bottom of the first inning, you hear the tires screeching on his way to Kowloon, he's on his way. That's just, his grandson has hit 2 homers at Fenway in the course of his career, and Yaz wasn't there for either one of them. I mean, how could you not? That's just him. So when we were going to do the book, I remember we got a bag of money, but the contract, we never did it because the contract called for appearances. If he agreed to take the money and sit with Dan for like a day or 2, get some interviews, and I'd do the whole book. So he didn't have to do anything, light lifted for him. And they said, but once the book comes out, you'll have to make 2 appearances. One day, like go to Walmart or something somewhere, and one day in New York City, do all the TV shows. And he said, I won't go to New York for $1 million. And he's from Long Island and played there 1,000 times as a player. So yeah, I love the guy. I have a lot of respect for anybody that can have that kind of principle about it. But yeah, he's 85, I think, now, and his health, he sounds pretty good. So God bless Yaz. Thanks for asking. Way back, I see a hand up.
Hey, so early reviews haven't been great on Tom Brady's broadcasting career. Do you think he'll grow into it and become a great?
I don't think he'll keep doing it. Again, it's like, $370 million contract or something. And I see no need for it. I don't think he's good at it. The guy that he replaced was better. What's his name? Greg
Olson.
Yeah, Greg Olson. That guy so he got demoted to the B crew, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom's good at everything, and he can do whatever he wants. I don't know. I'm surprised that interests him. And it's not really the best use of Tom Brady. I mean, he's so handsome. He should be in front of the camera, not talking during the game. Let's see more of him. And I think that there's a better way to use him. But maybe he'll loosen up and start to give great. Those guys, they're not that important to me in general, you know. But I know he's kind of stiff so far. But who wouldn't be? He's just not trained to do that, and he's also careful about not burying people because they're all his friends. So that makes it tough. But yeah. Who else has a question back there? Come on, yes, sir.
I spoke to you last year when you were here. Getting back to Mr. Fetterman's question about the gambling, and you said the same thing to him as you said to me last year about the ship was already sailed. But I think most of us here agree that it's not a good thing.
No.
It's certainly an evil thing. My question to you, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. If I read the Sunday Globe in the main column on a Sunday morning, am I ever going to see, not ever, but do you ever consider writing about that itself, major headline?
You know, no, it's kind of, it's like saying, you know, we all hate cancer, you know, we all hate bad things. To me, it's elaboration of the obvious. I don't feel the need to, it would just be, and it's also baying at the moon. I mean, it's not going to do any good. I mean, it's over.
That's correct.
It's been adjudicated, and it's a waste of space for me to do it.
Okay.
And there are people that love it, and there are people that really. One of my bosses was a big horse race guy, and he loves the whole thing, and doesn't object the way I object to it. But we just do.
I'm just concerned about the young kids.
Oh, of course, it's.
14 years old and somebody knows to fly bombs.
Oh my God.
It's all.
No, I don't think there's anyone. Well, maybe, but you know, yeah. I knock on wood that you know I have a son who's in that wheelhouse, and I hope he hasn't fallen for that because that's where they get him. You know, it's like drug addiction. First one's free, and go for that. And the way they promote it is like the way they promote drugs in the schoolyard. Here, have a taste here. You'll like it. You know, and then they tell you we'll give you $200 of free bets. I'll say it's corrupt. It's outrageous. So yeah, I'm not going to get anywhere with it, so I'm not going to bother. But thank you. Thanks for asking. Yes.
Any good Rico Petrocelli stories?
Well, Joe's got more than I do. I don't have great Rico stories. He's a wonderful man. He looks great. Joe, you got a Rico story for anybody?
I remember him catching the top 5.
Yeah. The last out of the '67 regular season, Rich Rollins.
You remember that? That's all I got for you.
Yeah. No, I wish I had more. Little known fact, it'd be hard to find this, but he switch hit when he first came to the big leagues, just for like a couple weeks. He gave up hitting from the left side. Nobody wants to give up those at-bats, but he did do it. I remember, I was a little kid, but I remember that. But he had a wonderful career, because he was still playing in '75 when they got to the World Series, playing third base then. Great guy, looks great. You know, those Italian guys live forever. You gotta love them, you know, it's like that, you know. Yes?
So I want to ask you about baseball. First of all, Sean McDermott struck a kid out, and Billy Tompkins
Did-
was coaching in 2006.
Okay. Did Sean McDermott go to Virginia Tech?
Yes.
Yeah, left-hander.
Yeah,
That's
Billy
good.
Tompkins blew his arm out or had
Oh, well, yeah.
But, I mean, baseball, I thought baseball kind of lost its way. It was kind of the clock and all. Where are you?
Oh, I love the clock.
But where are you in your love of baseball from where you were as a kid?
Well, again, my love of baseball from where I was as a kid, I'm never going to be 8 years old again. And, you know, and again, the game, if you watch those games now, they were faster, the pace was better. Guys didn't strike out so freely. You know, guys put the ball in play. Game 7 of the 1960 World Series, 13-12, Pirates-Yanks, not one strikeout. You know, these inflated strikeout numbers, the fact that nobody changes their approach at 2 strikes, the freedom of strikeouts. The Red Sox are the most striking out team I've ever seen this year. They've had 12 strikeouts, I think 70 times or something. It's off the charts. It's just meaningless. So, yeah, the pace of play, no balls in play. I hate. The clock does not bother me. The clock brings back some of what it was when I was young. Just get the ball and throw it. You know, stop this stepping out, standing around. So I'm good with the clock. I'm also good with the extra inning thing. I know it's phony, but, you know, I'm 71. I want to go home. You know, and we know it's going to be over pretty soon. I'm okay with that. You know, I mean, Joe, you okay with the ghost runner, Joe?
What?
You're putting the guy on second, the 10th?
Absolutely. You know why?
Why?
How many times you seen extra innings go 5 or 6 innings boring as hell.
Yeah.
Right after that, we got some action. I love that one.
This is coming from the man who managed the 26th inning game, right?
Yeah, that was 23 innings.
Yeah, that was, oh yeah, right. That's another story. Yes, ma'am?
Quick question.
Oh, excuse me, behind you, I got it, no one, she hasn't had a chance yet.
What's your perspective on the future of women's professional basketball?
The future of women, well, their ratings are up 170% this year, and the TV numbers are skyrocketing. So this Caitlin Clark and, what's the gal's name? Angel Reese. That's been good. I mean, Clark sort of got it going, and Reese has been a good, but it's a little bit like Larry and Magic. And it's been really good for the league. People are watching, and men are watching. And people who buy stuff, buy advertising are watching. So I can't get it. I got into the Clark mania, but like there are some things, I just go with what I like. Like I like women's tennis more than men's tennis, because I like the 2 out of 3. I like the longer rallies. My niece was on the tour. That helps a little bit too, I suppose. And like I told you, I love the field hockey and at the Porkers. My sister kind of brought me around. I've had, a lot of women athletes. I mean, I get crap for not doing more about it, but I've seen more women's sports than almost anyone I know because of, 2 daughters who played high school and college, a sister who played high school and college, and a niece who was on the tour. And, but they're not going to become the NBA. But this is really good what's going on. And it's a weird season too. I'm not so sure they wouldn't be better off even going up against the men during the season, like October to the spring. This whole summer thing, like the playoffs start September 22 for the WNBA. That's weird. I don't know, I have trouble getting into that calendar that they have. But anyway, the women's sports is coming in a big way, and like when you watch the Olympics, it carries it. The women's events are just better, and people watch more. So it's come a long way since when I was a kid, and my sister, there was nowhere to go. Yes, sir?
What was going on with Tatum at the Olympics?
What was going on with Tatum at the Olympics? I mean, Steve Kerr's a good guy. Kuz launched into that. I called Kuz to wish him happy birthday, and he launched into this Tatum thing. It's like, and he was right. I mean, it was embarrassing. I thought Tatum took it very well. I don't know what it's about. I mean, they had to cater to LeBron and Durant and Curry to a degree, but I covered the Dream Team in Barcelona in '92, and there was 11 minutes for everybody at least. No one had less than 11 minutes, and that team was more stacked than this team. So it's inexcusable. I don't understand it. 2 games he didn't get off the bench at all. It's crazy. He didn't look great when he was out there. He didn't really, I don't know what that was about either, but it'll be fun to watch him play against the Warriors this year, I'll tell you that. So very legitimate question. All right, we should just do one more, and I should give the room back, close up the library before they kick us out of here. Who wants to ask the last? Yes?
You've written a lot of blunt stuff about Robert Kraft.
I was inches from a clean getaway here.
Are there any personal stories, interactions with him?
So Bob Kraft, and again, he's always Bob Kraft to me, because that's what he was when he owned the Boston Lobsters, and he was just an international forestry tire kicker, good guy, one of the greatest wives of all time, the true legitimate saint, Myra Kraft, who we all love to death. And Bob's a good guy. He's been a great owner. He's extremely needy and easy to tease. He just overinflates everything and he plays both sides of every issue, like Deflategate. He's demanding justice from the league. Then he goes to the meeting and he rolls over and takes all the penalties without any push because he wants to have a seat at the table. The documentary where the Kill Bill documentary with Apple TV, which 10-part series, at the end of which you say, how'd they win all those Super Bowls without a coach? It's amazing. And then he says, yeah, I didn't like that. Why, and like, Bob, you produced it. I mean, you can't be Scorsese and complain that The Flowers of the Killer Moon is too long. I mean, you're trying to do both. So it started when I was noticing the bio was getting bigger every year in the press guide. I'm looking up, like, he's taking credit for Martina Navratilova being a good tennis player now, because she played a couple matches for the Lobsters in the '70s. So, and then at the end it said, Bob graduated from Columbia, he's a member of the Board of Trustees, and also played football at Columbia. And I'm thinking, I have stood next to this man. He did not play football. So I write a little column about the inflation of the self-promotion, and I say, and his bio also says he played football at Columbia, and I put, and I was on the Apollo 11 mission. You know. So, he took umbrage to that, and then he had the SI, the Sports Information Director of Columbia, reach out to the Globe to insist that he had played lightweight football at Columbia, which was like a flag football, 150-pound and under thing. They played on the lawn. So technically, he did play football at Columbia. And they wanted a correction. I said, I'll write the correction, you know. Anyone who wants their name and lightweight in the same paragraph, the Globe regrets the error. So anyway, you've been a wonderful crowd. We can do this all night. Thank you.